We process about 400,000 labs a year. We report over 100,000 cases of disease, so you can imagine the volume that Florida handles was something to be dealt with. So the system enabled us to use its inherent capacity to augment the workflows, put in edit checks, automate where we could to enable the DIS to do a job and handle the volume that they're working with at the pace that they needed to work through. PRISM in Florida, it has interoperability with its Vital Statistics Office. We also have the same sorts of mobility to enable our staff to use PRISM from a BlackBerry in the field, or they can use netbooks, small laptops, things like that. That kind of mobility is inherent with us too, based on the need that we had. Unlike other applications, Florida's PRISM application is a written application by Florida, so it is not owned. It is, in a sense, communal property. What we did is we reached out to states across the country and offered an arrangement. If they wanted to use the application, they could have the application for free, all code, all tables, all enhancements. The agreement was that, you know, between ourselves, that code and everything would just be kept to ourselves and not shared with corporate interests, which would turn around and use the code and charge us for something we already had built. So it's kind of like one of those commune approaches to systems development, or not shareware per se, but definitely something where we collaborate amongst the states that are using it. So that's the approach. I don't think I'll go into a whole lot of technical detail, because I'm sure that would only bring you to tears, except to say that the application's primary focus during the development was definitely on the field operations sides of an STD program. Although it has a lot of analytics and reporting features, it definitely was built around the ability to support the full functionality of an STD program in operations. So that's a lot of its strength. I'll just give you a couple heads up. The one thing that we've discussed at national meetings and other places like that is moving into any application, the largest expense you're going to run into, even though I say that you can have the application or the application code and everything is available for free, is the investment you're going to make into the initial conversion from wherever you are to where you want to be. Always be cognizant of that as a recommendation, whether you're using Maven, PRISM, or going to your own development. The other thing is, there was a question about weaknesses and strengths. There's a whole lot of strengths I think that PRISM has, but one of its inherent weaknesses is in the process of trying to stay current and keep on track with the demands that the application has on it. One of its weaknesses is the training or the depth of that type of information that people have often asked for. We don't have a whole lot of manuals or training materials, but certainly have the capacity to share how the system works through WebExes and things like that. As far as lessons we've learned that I could share with you that as you consider whatever you may be doing, the difficult question before anyone at this point is, when you move forward to invest in any application, what does the future hold? Where does STD fit into the larger picture of public health and clinical operations? A lot of states are at different places with that. And I think the difficulty is we are at a point as a program nationally is how do we fit into the future of electronic health records and things like that? You know, whether it's one system or another. The tough questions are what the future holds and how we get there. And I think even PRISM or itself really has to be seen as a transitional state. In the future, at some point, there has to be a lot of interoperability between surveillance systems, field services systems, and the clinical systems like that is offered through electronic health record development. So I don't know if any one system at this point is the be-all or end-all, but it certainly is a transitional state while we try and figure out over the coming years where we need to be as a program. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Stacy. I was just talking to a project area that installed PRISM just last week, so they're in the throes of that conversion right now. So just to open it up for folks who have any initial comments or questions for Amanda or Stacy, and to unmute your line, it would be *7.
Hi, Stacy and Amanda. This is Bernard in South Carolina. If you had to do it all over again, what's the biggest thing or the most important thing you would do differently about either moving to Maven or the building of PRISM?
This is Amanda, and I, with each kind of initial build we had in the start, we were all given opportunities for comment and input. And at that time I was a DIS, so they wanted us to look at usability and different things like that. And it's a struggle. It's almost like 2 steps forward and 1 step back to see how getting it to function in a program manager capacity and the things that we need as program managers, but on the same side looking at how the DIS need it to be highly functional for them. And I think in our initial stages, I think more time could have been dedicated to that, to make sure we weren't always backstepping so much. I believe that we have grown tremendously in the last few years that we've been using it. But that initial part of kind of understanding the capacities of both kind of halves of the system, whereas some program managers don't understand don't understand fully the capabilities that the DIS need it for, and the DIS don't understand the capabilities that the program managers need for. So I think from the get-go, I think understanding that on both sides, and so both parties are aware, needs to be solid in order to not have so much delay in getting it functioning and how you want to do it.
This is Stacy. Bernard, this may make most of you laugh, but I think I'd rethink whether we wanted to go as far as to make the application as smart as it might be, and I'll tell you why. When you put in a lot of edit checks and you build an application with some sort of business intelligence in it, there is this weird effect on the users, and I mean this in the best possible way, but it does seem to dumb down the quality. I mean, there is an over-reliance now on the application to do the thinking for you, and I think there's a balance between what the application should be able to do and what the user needs to know and be conscious of. And I think in our zeal to make life so simple, or to make things have the edit checks to keep mistakes from being made, I think what we've encouraged is a lessened focus on the quality of the users from the user's perspective when they're using the application, and an over-reliance on the application, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
And Bernard, what are you all using?
Well, currently we're on a STD MIS system, but we're moving toward a Maven product that we're going to rename Scion and include a lot of the other diseases and programs, TB and acute epi, and all of those diseases will be thrown into it. But it's a Maven-based product.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Who else has a question or comment for Amanda or Stacy?
Hi, this is Kim in Vermont, and this is a question for Stacy. You'd mentioned your interoperability approach, which is great. Is PRISM right now capable of consuming a 251 ELR HL7 message?
Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, for Wyoming, what we did is we worked specifically with that HL7 format for them to be able to use, and which is unique because it's not what we do in Florida. In Florida, we use an integration broker to work with the 2.51 HL7 format to load into a repository. But in one state, they wanted to use the direct file format. So yeah, we do have that code.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
And please remember to mute your phones. I hear a little background noise. So Stacy, I know that you had mentioned initial conversion costs there. What, and I know it varies depending on project areas and the systems that they are converting from, but can you give us like an average of just a range of what you were looking at in Florida?
As far as actual dollar amounts?
Yeah, well, I know you can't pinpoint it, but yes.
Yeah. Oh, Lord. See, the problem we ran into is that we had used STD-MIS for so many years and actually converted STD-MIS with each iteration, from 2 to 3 to 3.5 and all that business. And with each iteration, there was a loss of integrity, at some point. So we had complications in data conversion because integrity was not, 100% reliable just to dump data from one system to the next. So there was a lot of cleanup that had to take place. So I would imagine we just in DBA and technical expertise, man hours, we must have put at least 100,000 into that, and a lot of man hours. Because we were decentralized as far as STD-MIS, so it was not only just the conversion, it was gathering up all the instances and combining them into one to make it a centralized system. And that conversion is just a beast. It doesn't matter where you start from. You think you got control of things when you're using the system, but it's like moving. You never know how much junk you got until you have to move.
Right, right. I'm just wondering if folks who are contemplating these changes are trying to do a cost-benefit analysis of course, whatever software they're looking at. If you're hearing Amanda say the costs that have gone into the Maven project since 2009, I mean, $1.8 million. Wow. When you're thinking about, the programs. So, and PRISM being a free application, but of course, there are always costs involved with everything. Just trying to think through some of that stuff for programs that are on the line. Who else? Questions for Amanda? Comments from Amanda or Stacy?
Hi, this is Juan Mendez in Portland, Oregon. We're currently using an access system, but we're exploring other systems. I'd like to know what issues or how did you handle data sharing with outlying counties? Example, let's say you have 10, 15 counties and they all want access to their data. How did you handle that process with the database?
Okay, so I'll jump in here and I'll tell you what happened in Florida, and maybe we're unique. And by the way, go Ducks. Okay, so here's the thing. In Florida, we were blessed to have a backbone across the state that enabled a network capability from the 67 counties that's scattered across the state. So what we were able to do is the application, of course, can utilize that network to tap a centralized database. So the connectivity is done through a secured socket layer connection to the main database up here with the usual accoutrements of user interfaces that you might expect with systems. But it was the existence of that backbone and that network that enabled us to do that versus the old systems of dial-up or multiplexers, and if you're old enough to remember those. So that's what put us ahead of the game as far as being able to make outlying counties access central repositories like PRISM.
And Juan, thanks for your question. I'm not sure how South Dakota's application of Maven will do that question justice. We're such a small state with really a state health department. We don't have other county health departments. We're able to run our reports via county and tabulate that way out. But many times, to be quite honest, counties don't really care too much about what their data is, or there's not a lot of requests. We may have requests from providers in an area or persons doing a comparison analysis study or something like that, and we've given them the raw numbers, but there's no patient information being shared back and forth. The system is obviously secure, and persons that have access, our program staff and DIS. So I just don't think our example is good for that Maven situation, but maybe there would be another state that's larger that would use it in that capacity.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Hi, this is Robin Hennessy, and I'm from New York City and STD Program, and we are a Maven user for STD, communicable disease, TB, and vaccine preventable diseases. And I just wanted to make a comment about the cost. And you had said that the $1.2 million that South Dakota paid for their Maven versus PRISM being free. And I think that it's sort of important to understand that there are more sort of influences coming at you to make your decisions, not just cost. For example, in New York City, several other programs in our agency were hoping to get a new application, and so Maven seemed to fit all of those needs. So STD could have decided to join up with the prevailing agency, or do something like choose PRISMs and go out on their own. So even though it was a cost to us, there were factors sort of outside of what the STD people can make themselves. And I think that it's important for folks to recognize that just because New York City has Maven doesn't necessarily mean that it would be the right choice for someone else, but it was the right choice for us at the time given the other items going on politically within our agency.
Yeah, thanks for that comment, Robin. Absolutely. I think it would be probably a hardship for most programs to take this on, any of them by themselves. So certainly we know it's a concerted effort among several programs and if not, divisions. So thank you, certainly. Who else has a comment or question for Amanda or Stacy?
Hi, this is Kristen Kreisel from the Virginia Department of Health. I just wanted to talk, or hear you guys talk about the logistics of how you did the transition. What was involved in, checks that you had to do on your end, looking at duplicate patients, merging that kind of information, and what sort of help you got on the consilient side in making those things happen.
That's a great question, and unfortunately I probably can't give you the best answer because at the time we made the conversion I was in the field staff, so I wasn't privy to that. Our deduplication right now is pretty seamless. We have workflows that if a person, name and demographics, date of birth, that kind of thing, seems like it would be matching up, it would trigger for a possible match, for person match. And then the same sort of thing would apply adding in the clinical information. So maybe the system would recognize it as potentially duplicates of the same infection or the same event at that time. And it's just something that we do as program managers on a regular basis, going through the deduplication. So that's what I can comment on the part of it now. I'm unsure of how everything went down when they transitioned because I wasn't here.
Well, okay, so in Florida, the approach we took was to build a conversion team. The strength was placed on the skill sets around DBAs, and of course there are a host of third-party tools that you can use to apply against data sets in order to deduplicate and make enable yourself to have distinct records. So this team in particular worked through the process of dump of all STD-MIS data and its associated what was then called events and records like field records, interviews and so forth, partners and so forth. And they were able to use these third-party tools and DBA skills to actually create a unique patient or profile core data set, which from that, then we were able to relink to those patients all the events that are associated with it, and that was a real broad generalization view of how we approached the conversion. And logistically, I'm going to tell you, the truth is, for all the technology and stuff that there is in the world, you're going to wind up spending a lot of hours visually looking at things, because no matter how effective tools are, it takes a human being ultimately to review a lot of things to make a decision. So there were a lot of hours looking at individual records as well. So logistically, it was not, it was good, but it wasn't exactly the prettiest thing in the world.
You mean we just can't hit a button for that, Stacy?
Well, I know Tom Cruise can when in his movies, but no, no, not in the real world. No.
Can you hear me again?
Yes.
Hi, I'm sorry, I just don't know when I'm on mute or not. Again, this is Robin in New York, and we certainly converted 10 years worth of very, very, very dirty STD-MIS data. And STD-MIS data is going from person-based system into the Maven-based system, which was events, and we were trying to clean up bad links or lacking links. And I will say that it was a huge, huge amount of effort, but I was pretty thoroughly impressed with Consilience's ultimate ability to get the majority of our data in and in correctly. It took them a lot more time than they were expecting, but I do think that makes them experts in some way now in STD-MIS data.
If it's of any consolation, and this is just my opinion, once you get yourselves out of old applications that are not, don't have a lot of strength that maintain referential integrity, modern systems are very good at that. Modern database technology is light years ahead of, let's say, the old STD-MIS where we used to live in. So once you make that leap, the technology supports keeping that integrity a lot stronger. And so, like they've talked about before, it's a lot easier now to keep things deduplicated or clean and linked versus keeping it in that old technology. That makes sense.
This is Bernard from South Carolina again. Another one of the things, probably at the 50,000-foot level, is in South Carolina, we've, in our contract to purchase the Maven product, negotiated to have a technical assistance person and some hours from Consilience doing certain things for us. Certainly we've gotten on board CDC, as they know most about STD-MIS, to work with us as well, and the local folk here in South Carolina who are fairly skilled at transitioning data from one database or system to another. So that those three individuals or collections of people, I think, will do a pretty decent job of working together to move the data over. And as New York said, Consilience has some more experience with this, so they will make less mistakes, or it will take them less time to resolve certain issues. But we plan to clean up, and we are already doing this, cleaning up our databases as best we can and our pick list, and deduplicating a lot of stuff before we even attempt to shove it into our Maven system.
Thanks, Bernard, and thanks, Robin, as well, for adding your experience. It sounds like Maven really has some great strengths as it relates to training technical assistants and that component of it to get folks through the transition process. And I know, Stacy, you had mentioned previously about training as it relates to PRISM and all of that stuff. Can you speak a little more about moving forward what any of that might look like, or for folks who may be considering that option?
Well, for us, so here's the weakness side of PRISM. Like I said, PRISM is supported by 3 people. So the entire state of Florida and any other state in the midst of a conversion can really pretty much rely on 1, 2, or 3 of us here in Florida. And in all of this process, we never, like I said, documented a whole lot. So what we've done is, because many states are turning to the application, we've asked that CDC look at whether or not they'd be willing to step up and kind of provide guidance or help us out with some of these types of weaknesses to provide that sort of infrastructure and background that we can't provide as a single program. So in the future, what I hope to see is a lot more documentation on processes and user manual-oriented types of material, and then also have some place that people can actually go to experiment with or play with a copy of the application, which we've kind of not had available, for anyone to use, and I'm hoping that CDC can help us out with that. So that's sort of where we are, and you understand, right, and let's just be perfectly clear, I'm not Convergence and I'm not a company, so I certainly don't have a wealth of staff to invest in anything other than sort of what we've got to maintain the system and do what we needed to do here. So that is one advantage you have with corporate approaches. That's what they're there for. And free, is great, but like people have said, there's a cost to free as well. So.
Great. Thanks for clarifying all of that. Thank you. Who else on the line? Questions or comments? If you're thinking about a transition and what you may be thinking about, and it doesn't have to be Maven or PRISM.
Yeah, Dana, I was kind of interested in how many other callers on the line have homegrown systems that they've kind of built themselves.
That's a great question.
Hello?
Yes.
This is New York State Department of Health. We recently built a home system and migrated over in 2011. It's actually part now of our morbidity or our surveillance system as well.
Hello. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, this is Georgia. Georgia also has built its own homegrown system, and we migrated over to that system in 2010.
This is Roxanne Era in Arizona, and we had a homegrown system that was built in late 1990s, and I've kind of been biting my tongue because we are in the process of transitioning into PRISM right at this moment. We got all the data in at 9 o'clock on Sunday. So.
All right. How's it going for you, Roxanne?
Oh, talk about someone that said we had a lot of dirty data. and because it was in a different system, how PRISM reports out some of the stuff that we've reported out, it relies on different kinds of dates and so on and so forth. So we got a lot of juggling to do. But I think it'll be all good. We just have to recreate our protocols and processes and hold tight and just realize that this too will pass.
I can actually say that, again, this is Robin. When we were planning our Maven, it did take we did use it as an opportunity to study our processes, and we were actually able to come up with a fair amount of places where there was duplicated effort and things that didn't need to be done, and ways that we could actually streamline our processes. So if nothing else, it gives you sort of that opportunity to look at what it is you're doing, and do you still need to do it that way, and should you do it that way.
So Robin's just revealed to you the part of the effort that involves the blood and the changing old mindsets and figuring out better ways to do things. That's always interesting. Florida went through that too, by the way, the business process improvement, because of the same thing. If you start studying your processes, you realize that you are inefficient in many ways. And it was very interesting to introduce new ways to old mindsets and then introduce new terminology that people were not familiar with, and that was painful in and of itself, I think.
Now, Bernard, I know you had asked the question about folks on the line who had developed their own system. Was there anything in particular that you were looking for from that? I heard Georgia and New York say, were you looking for anything beyond that?
Yeah, as CDC kind of add variables and change variables and stuff, if any of the different systems on the line could talk about the ease or the problematic issue of adding a variable, manipulating a variable or whatever in code, and that process, how long does it take, and how much of an effort is it to when CDC adds a variable or something?
Bernard, that's a good question, and I don't know anything about coding. I just tell the guys what I need, and they throw it in where it needs to be. So unfortunately, I don't have enough IT stuff to be able to tell you how hard it is for them, but usually they figure it out for me.
Hi, New York State can comment on that question. Our system actually is administered by a separate program, and it's in Java code on an Oracle system, and many times, like the individual program needs, like the STD program has a request for a change, and we tend to have to wait sometimes long periods of time for other priorities to be completed. Like, for instance, we just migrated from Sybase to Oracle, and we haven't been able to make one change to our system since August of 2012. So it can take a long time to get things done like that.
For Florida, I'm honestly quite spoiled. It only takes a few minutes. Anytime CDC starts manipulating with a NETS file, or there's a new partner services XML file, or there's some sort of new risk or whatnot, the adding and changing is not difficult. PRISM is built on a SQL backend, and SQL skills are fairly common across in the IT world. So we definitely have the luxury of having that kind of flexibility and implementation fairly quickly.
Yeah, this is Robin again. I will definitely say that that is one of Maven's strengths, and that is the user can do that themselves. I mean, I could probably add a variable. I don't like to let CDC know how easy it is for me to put in a variable, because for most people it can be very painful. But I would say that that's one of their strengths.
Georgia is similar to New York State. We have a database administrator who not only works for the STD program, but he works for all programs. And if there is a higher priority, sometimes we do have to wait months before the changes are made. But if there's no priorities, he can get them done within a few hours.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you all for your comments on that. That's really good to know. Who else wants to just open it up, questions or comments?
This is Juan with Multnomah County in Portland, Oregon. Just wanted to mention we're using Access with the SQL backend. And when we first started, we migrated from STD MIS, from EpiInfo actually in the year 2000 to Access. We hired our own vendor, a local vendor, to develop our database. But one of the big issues recently has been when we let our local IT take over the database, it's gotten extremely hard to get into queue to get changes made to the database. Just wanted to mention that.
That's a good point. I think every program struggles with the haunting prospect of losing that kind of control. What STDMIS spoiled us with was having pseudo experts or IT experts in-house within the program that could change STDMIS. And in some situations, when the control mechanisms or the enhancement processes are turned over to IT or to different bureaus, I think there's a lot of bureaucracy involved in getting these simple changes done that we were able to do in the old world, the old DOS world, for sure.
This is Susanna Bencourt from Multnomah County as well. And it sounds like Maven and PRISM are also used for food outbreaks and vital stats. Can you guys talk a little bit more about that? Have you guys been able to reduce the amount of systems that you guys have in your department because of those features?
Yeah, this is South Dakota, and it's been quite a benefit to us. We had a couple different kind of in-house things to manage our EPIs and such, and a lot of it was paper as well, and as well as electronic. And Maven just allowed us to just do so much more with that, and looking at different options. And like I said, things that they're thinking about and have done with that food outbreak is this idea of a patient portal, and you know, having patients have a specific access to just, you know, their event or their information, and or you know, whatever it may be, and putting that information in for us to pull it in for instances that we need. And I think that that's something to kind of think about in this world of technology. And maybe it's even with STDs. In South Dakota, we don't have very many syphilis, which is nice for us. So we do work some chlamydias, but you know, maybe it's using it for a non-priority STD in some way of doing some partner services or having things linked up. So I think the capability is there, and then what Stacy's been saying too, it doesn't really matter, you know, what program you're going to choose or what you're going to do or make your own. It has to be for everyone in your state and what's going to work for you, and the certain growing pains that might go with it with any system. So.
For Florida, let me say that to answer your question specifically, has it reduced the number of systems? No. What it has enabled us to do is have access to the data within those systems without having the user go into those systems to obtain that data, which I think you understand the difference. The problem we have in Florida, well, the challenge we have in Florida is that county health departments are telling us repeatedly that communicable disease programs or infectious disease programs have got too many systems, whether it's HIV, STD, doesn't matter, pick a program. Every program's got its own application, and the consistent complaint, and rightfully so, is that there are too many systems doing duplicate data entry, and they want to kind of hone it down to something manageable. So the challenge before Florida over the next several years is how to examine the systems within communicable disease to either reduce the number of systems or create interfaces that feed those systems from one point. You know, like I often use the example, when you go into Amazon, you don't realize it, but you're actually touching thousands of databases across the world. But for the user, you don't have to understand that. All you have to know is what you want to do. So I think what we're going to try and do is not eliminate the systems, but try and put something, a user interface that enables us to access those systems seamlessly without separate logins and all that business. And that's kind of where I see us going. But in the immediate future, I don't see a reduction in the number of systems yet.
Thank you.
And this is Bernard from South Carolina again. One of the reasons why we chose the Maven product, it's kind of like Legos in a box, and many of our different programs here that had different databases and stuff, they're all tying into Maven. And the Maven product allows for a core and then spindles or attachments to the core of different programs. STD is an attachment to the core. TB can be an attachment. Immunizations can be an attachment. So any of the personnel in those programs can enter information on Bernard Gilliard based on their program, and the assignments of rights can be such that as people have comorbidities or co-issues, somebody with more globalized rights can see that Bernard not only has HIV, he has TB too. So without going outside the database, so it's a lot cleaner where, as Stacy kind of said, I think you don't have to have a whole lot of personnel with different skills and different coding language expertise and stuff. It's all one program. It's all one code. It's just a matter of assigning rights and capabilities of personnel to manage comorbidities all in one clean system.
Thank you. Thank you. Any last questions or comments for Amanda or Stacy, or anything that you just want to comment for the group, to the group? I thank all of you for your participation. I especially thank Amanda Gill in South Dakota and Stacy Shriver in Florida for another great call. Following the call, you'll get an evaluation, and if you have any thoughts for an upcoming topic for It's Your Call, please feel free to send me that information. Last questions? Going once? Going twice? Thank you all. See you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Please stand by.